Hi, welcome to Eternally Bored. This is episode 18, Style Over Substance. Or, in our case, Substance Over Style.
Try to keep it classy, everyone.
Exactly. Alright, we are joined with Ben, the self-styled most critical gamer, but it's actually an accurate description, so...
I don't know if it's self-styled. I feel like y'all gave me that name, and I've just taken it as an identity in some way. So.
He's owning it? Yeah, he should own it.
And on a small note, congratulations on your wedding.
Yes.
Yes, he has claimed the gamer as his very own to play the game that we like to call marriage.
He's gained the permanent second player.
Yeah.
Alright, so today we're going to be talking about basically what I think is a large increase in style or substance, especially in like this Kickstarter era. Not to say that all the games are bad, but we'll get into that in a minute. And then we'll talk about our top 3 aesthetically pleasing games. As we argue for substance over style, then we're going to go into
pretty
into games we think are pretty.
Obviously, we're all hypocrites here.
Yeah, just a little irony. And then we'll talk about games we played recently. But before we get into the topic du jour, I do want to announce officially that we are part of a podcast network. It is called Punchboard Media. It has tons of different board game podcasts associated with it, and go check out their website. You can definitely find other shows that you will enjoy. I hope to partner with some of those podcasts and start featuring them on our show and kind of like highlight them one at a time and kind of describe them for you guys in future episodes. But hopefully that'll start next episode. Okay. So in the meantime, just go check out their website. And basically their whole kind of mission statement is they want to increase like diversity in the hobby. That's like their main goal. So a lot of their podcasts kind of focus on that, and they felt like we fit in well with their mission statement. So I'm glad they did. All right, let's go to the topic du jour. So first question is, how important are aesthetics to you personally? Do we want to start with our guest, Ben?
All right. So I was thinking about this question. I think I want to start with the most extreme version of my position, and then maybe backtrack from there. If I were to make a list of things that I like about board games, probably mechanics would be on top, maybe then rules, clarity, and then probably right around the bottom is where I'd put aesthetics. Probably throw a theme at the bottom as well. I don't really care. I don't look at games to see like, oh, look at the pretty pictures. I play for fun. I play for the intellectual exercise. With all that being said, to backtrack, I think...
You play to criticize.
That's part of the intellectual exercise, I think.
Okay.
I think a good aesthetic can make a game more fun. But I think most of the time, or many times, the way a game looks is a cover for bad mechanics. People are like, oh yeah, it's like, this game has this problem, but look how pretty it is. The game is good. There's a term for it in psychology called the halo effect. It's like you evaluate something as better than it is because it has some other good quality.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Yeah. Charles, where do aesthetics align for you?
So, Trey, I use a method that you might remember called the hot crazy matrix when it comes to evaluating board games. And in that matrix, there's this direct correlation to the more attractive the game is, the crazier the mechanics are. And while the game might be good on table, it's not necessarily going to be good when you actually sit down and play it. This is not always the case. Obviously, I do believe that there's a great cause to get people to pick up the game and get people at least to say, hey, I like playing with these pieces. This looks cool to me. This looks like the type of game I want to be playing. A good example of that is, there are a number of games from designers who have utilized the same artist because this artist immediately brings people into the theme of their game, and they're, pretty knowledgeable of the fact that if I play a game with this theme, with this artist, by this designer, I'm pretty much going to be playing something that I know I already like, usually a variation, which is good. However, yes, I do believe that the prettier, or when a game is brand new, if there is a lot of focus on how it looks, the mechanics usually suffer.
Yeah, no, all great points. Yeah, and as an example of what he's talking about, if you notice, Uwe Rosenberg almost always uses the same artist. I think his name is Franz, his last name.
Clemens Franz.
Yeah,
Clemens
there you go.
Franz.
And so I think he does a great job of, like any kind of farming setting. He really brings you into the game because he's just really good at illustrating those types of things.
Just like Level 99 always use Nakamura?
Nokamento.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a few artists in their stable, but Nokamento's one of the big ones, and then the other one is Fabio, who is from Portugal. He's their other big artist. He did all the Millennium Blade stuff. All right.
It's a very particular style that Level 99 games have.
Yeah.
That you don't see in a lot of other games, and
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm that big of a fan of the style, but
Yeah.
also who cares?
Well, a lot of people do not like anime in general, and honestly, I think they do kind of turn some people off, and some people that would otherwise like Level 99 games don't purchase them because they don't like the aesthetics. But also vice versa. I think some people love the art style, and so that kind of gets them more into the game. So I personally like it. Obviously, I wouldn't go with that company if I didn't. And for me, I'm kind of with Ben, just not as extreme. Like it's like mechanics are at the top, obviously. Probably though, theme would be my number 2, whereas for him it was near the bottom. But definitely aesthetics is pretty low. Although it's kind of tied in with theme, really, right? Except for abstract games, you can have a really pretty abstract game and it has no theme. So I like aesthetics a lot, but it's more to me, it's like a bonus. It's if the game looks nice, that's just a bonus. If it's a good game, I'll play it either way. I mean, Charles was just looking at Antiquity. I finally got a copy after, it was my grail game for 10 years, and I finally get a copy of it. And it is an ugly game, but it is
Is it though?
I mean, maybe the ugliest game that I own. Actually, by far, is the ugliest game that I own.
I think a good analogy for this is if you're dating someone, the aesthetics is how rich they are. It's probably not even that really important to me, but if it's a thing they have, yeah, it's nice. It'd be nice to date someone rich. A little late for me now, but
he did not marry rich.
No.
He married a teacher like me, so yeah, we are not rich. Okay, so I think Splotter is kind of a good segue into this general discussion though, because people love Splotter games, especially Euro gamers, strategy gamers. And Splotter is really heavy on mechanics. They put all their effort into mechanics, and then they refuse to print in China for whatever reason. So then when you buy their games, they cost $110 for a bunch of cardboard that would normally cost you $50, $60 at most.
Imported from Germany. Imported from,
and you gotta pay,
printed in Germany.
Yeah,
so.
It's terrible as far as the pricing goes. But their games are really solid mechanically, so I will still buy them. I will still play them. I will still love them, even though they look like sin. My next topic was, are you worried about the effect that these $1 million minis-based Kickstarter games are having on the industry? Is it a problem, or is it just doesn't really matter because there's still good games coming out? Charles, why don't we start with you?
I would say that it's not a problem because obviously, there's a whole other cottage industry that is just bringing out these miniature-based games, and they're obviously selling to the people who really enjoy playing those types of games. I mean,
that's our fourth
yeah,
guess.
that's our fourth guess.
Yeah.
So, my worry about the effect on the industry of these the big Kickstarter games, I do believe that there has built up in Kickstarter a whole cottage industry of people who are, I don't know, they really want to have this type and system of games. I mean, they're there mostly to buy the miniatures as opposed to play the game, in my personal opinion. But they're building mechanics around these as well, and that's its own client demographic because these people, or not these people, these gamers really enjoy these systems and these games and these miniatures and the elaborate production that they can put into it. However, we do have a lot of us who are just I don't want to deal with this at all, or I don't want to even, it's not that we won't look at it, we're like, okay, well, maybe the next game you design Ben needs to have miniatures in it because obviously millions of dollars are going in this direction, and At the moment, you know, I think everyone is trying to find that happy medium melding of a good game with miniatures, and it's just elusive.
Yeah. That's true. And, you know, it always puzzles me how, like, some of these games raise all these millions of dollars on Kickstarter, and then I never see them played anywhere. Like, some of them get played, like, all the Eric Lane games get played, but, like, I never see someone, like, playing Zombicide, but they have, like, tens of thousands of backers and millions of dollars, and then I go to all these game conventions all over the nation, and then I never see anyone actually playing the game.
Yeah, because it's just okay.
I mean, I'm sure people play it at, like, their houses and stuff, but I just never see
Yeah,
people
just quietly in the
playing
dark,
it.
tears streaming down their faces.
Yeah.
Why won't anyone play this with me? Thank God for the solo variants.
Ben's opinions do not reflect the official opinions of Eternally Bored.
No,
Uh,
not
I mean,
at
the
all.
opposite.
Not in the smallest modicum of
but you
bit.
can email him at benmiller.gmail.com. I'm just kidding.
That's not me.
I know. Please don't email that guy, because he's not Ben. Alright, Ben, how do you feel about this effect?
I don't really think there's that big of an issue. I sort of generally side with the buy what you want and let other people buy what they want mentality. You know, like, who am I to tell you what to buy, even if your taste is terrible? But that being said, I have noticed that there's kind of a trend on Facebook where people get these fancy miniature madness games and they're like, oh, this is the best thing ever, and they talk about it ad nauseum, and, you know, if they do that, then what are they not buying instead? Right? What other game projects are they not supporting?
Yeah.
So I guess if it's a problem, depends on how you see the board game industry. Is it like a zero-sum game? Do people have a certain amount of board game money that they're going to spend on something, and if a large part of that's going to Kickstarter crap, instead of games with actually good mechanics, then that's a bad thing. But if you look at it a different way and say, oh, maybe it's not zero-sum, maybe they buy these games and they're like, oh, now I want even more, and they buy other stuff also, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of two minds about it, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with you. It would cause me more worry if good games weren't getting purchased, but I think good games are still doing well, even the ones that aren't super pretty. So I think there's still a place for ugly or not super beautiful, solidly games with solid mechanics out there.
Yeah.
So
I don't like the word ugly. I think we need like a nice euphemism for that, like aesthetically challenged games or something.
Yeah.
yeah. So no, go ahead.
You know, I think it's also a really good big point is, you know, when people buy a Kickstarter game and it has all the content included, they usually are going to be the only person to have that copy of the game. And if there's one thing that gamers love is being the only Highlander, being the only one to have a particular game, or not having other people, you know, buy a game that you've already pimped out to the extreme if you do it on the secondhand market. So I think it scratches that itch for a lot of people.
Okay, I got a better term. These I really prefer, instead of these prey games with good personality. So.
Games with good personality. I like it.
All right.
All right. So my final question for today: do we think games like Scythe and the new release Rising Sun deserve their accolades, or do we think they're just getting a ratings bump for their components? If you notice on BGG, almost every game with fancy miniatures that comes out has like an 8.0 or higher, and that's because, you know, backers, they want to support their game. Some of them rate it before they even receive the game. They just go in and they give it a 10 to kind of boost its visibility on BGG, and, you know, it's just, and also some unscrupulous Kickstarter runners ask their backers to do that, which is, you know, kind of questionable. But but anyway, so the question is, like, do we think they're getting a bump for their components, or do we think that some of these ridiculously overproduced games are actually good?
Definitely a bump. I mean, I would say that when I first got into the hobby, the BGG rating system was sort of sacrosanct, and now it's almost like
a joke.
It is a joke. I mean,
Cult of the New to the extreme.
It's very much like the NBA All-Star Game or something like that, where people can get unlimited votes and make up false accounts in order to bump up the numbers. I mean, you know, I know this is not board gaming, but there was a year when Yao Ming got more votes than Kobe Bryant, and that should never happen.
But Yao Ming was awesome.
Yeah,
Yao Ming is pretty cool.
But, you know, in general, it's a good guideline now. I mean, I do think these games do have a audience that they reach out to, and but it is ultimately inflated. Not to mention all the people who will just randomly give it a 1 because it was a Kickstarter game as well.
You know what gave me hope
If you were
though?
those people.
What gave me hope is that the ratings for Myth actually tanked. I don't know if y'all kept up with that debacle, but basically there was a game, it was a dungeon crawl game called Myth, and it shipped with like unplayable rules, and that community actually revolted. Not the whole community. It still has its fanboys that will defend it till the day they die, but a lot of the community was like, this game is unplayable. Like some of the effects in the game, like poison, weren't explained in the rulebook at all. And so it eventually ended up with getting like a 6.5 on BGG. I think it's increased since then because they've patched the game. They've released new rules. They released a second edition with a better rule book. So it's steadily gone back up. But the BGG community did revolt against that game, and I think that was for the better.
Yeah, I think both of y'all are correct. Which pains me to say that, but I think games are definitely inflated. That's pretty easy to see. But with enough time, they get closer to where their actual score should be.
Mm-hmm.
So what this has meant essentially is that if you look at a game and it has a good rating, you have to look at other things too. You can't just say, "Oh, it's a good rating, must be a good game." You have to look at, was it kickstarted and how long's it been out.
Yeah.
And those are dual factors that you also have to consider in order to see if the rating is accurate or not. So.
Yeah. And I mean, Zombicide is pretty highly ranked, but I haven't actually played it, so I don't actually know if Zombicide's a bad game. Maybe it's a good game.
I mean, it's not terrible. It's just not as good as this. Here's the thing: like, there are much better games that just are older, and they're not as highly ranked because they're not as new, and there's more people on there voting now.
Yeah. I would like to do an episode in the future where we talk about, are new games actually better, or is it just kind of like the brand new shiny effect? Because if you look at the top 100, like newer games have been making huge inroads. I'm talking like games that were there for 10 years, 15 years are like finally falling off the list, and like you have Scythe, which I singled out because it's currently ranked 8th on BGG.
Which is absurd.
8th best game of all time.
Not even.
Scythe. I'm like, I've played Scythe, and I don't hate Scythe. I actually like Scythe.
Yeah, it's okay, but like 8th of all time?
Yeah.
And Rising Sun? I mean, I'm sure we're going to talk
And the
about
games
that
that
later.
and then the games that they're replacing that held, on to their position for a long time. Well, for every Kalis that probably should have dropped, there's like a Puerto Rico that probably should have stayed up there, or Twilight Struggle, which is still a very good 2-player game, no matter
And
what.
if you say so, I'm not a big Twilight Struggle fan, but
I'm not a huge Twilight Struggle fan either, but
I like it.
I've played the game of it, and I'm like, okay, I understand what's going on. I personally don't want to play it, but when I'll watch other people play it, and I find it sort of gripping. So
Yeah, no, it's a very good game. That game, well, that's a different podcast, but
come back to that one.
yeah. So yeah, I kind of agree with my host. I think that there's definitely a component bump for a lot of these games, and but is that legitimate? I think it's legitimate to give a game a high rating because of its aesthetics. Although I wouldn't give a game a 10 when it deserves a 7. I'd give it an 8 when it deserves a 7 because of its great components.
But see, on the other hand, there are games that I give 10s to, even though the base game won't. Small World, the Super Deluxe Edition, is a 10 to me because this is literally the greatest game ever produced. Even though Small World might be an 8.
Charles is part of the problem.
Okay, yeah.
What? I'm sorry.
This is just wrong.
true.
First of all,
It's
Small
true.
World, not even close to an 8.
It's
Try
not-
6. Second of all,
Wait, no.
Okay,
Small World was an 8.
oh god,
It's fine.
terrible game. All right, so the second thing is like, you're gonna say components bring it. So you know what 10 is? Like, do you ever read the descriptions? 10 is like, we'll always play, willing to play at all times. How many times have you played that Small World game?
How many times have I even seen it to play? It's literally so elusive and so expensive.
I'm saying,
I'm
even if
not-
it were on the, even if someone brought it, would you be like, oh yeah, I really want to play Small World? I don't
Well,
think so.
it's just okay. I put it in the
Plains of
same.
Caledonia or Small World? Come on.
I would play that Small World if it was available, just like I would play it on a board gaming table if I had one, especially the old school Geek Sheet tables. But we don't have them. But those tables are just tables. But when we're talking about what they meant to the hobby industry, they're a 10. And for a while, I
guess
hated
can
to see
the
them go
argument,
away.
But like, I don't know. It just seems
It is literally
overinflated.
It is exactly the counter of what we're talking to. But that's the whole reason why these Kickstarter games do good. They have moments, to some people where it's like, that is the most beautiful miniature ever. And I'll talk about
man,
that.
Go to the art
later
museum.
on.
Shit. Let's say that.
All right, I gotta try to edit that out too.
All right.
It's not gonna be edited
All right,
on
so-
YouTube. Sorry, YouTube.
You know. Do you want to go to the top 3?
Yeah, let's go to
All right,
let's do it.
the top 3.
So we'll do the top 3 most aesthetically pleasing games, and please realize these are all very subjective.
Honorable mentions first, though.
No,
But-
I mean, there's no
yeah.
subjectivity. This is entirely objective.
Yeah,
right
we're
now.
this is an objective
Okay.
podcast. We're letting you know, the listener, what the most beautiful games
These
are.
are facts. No bias.
All right, honorable mentions. Charles, you have honorable mentions?
I have an honorable mention for a game that people put a lot of effort into, though they didn't really come that way, which is Tzolk'in. I really thought the
Yeah,
industry
that's good.
it was printed just plain plastic, but the background that came up behind it was just great. All these boards coming out were great.
Unfortunately, the game doesn't belong on the list unless you paint your copy. If you
Yes.
paint your copy, it looks like an amazing game. If you don't paint your copy, it looks very plain.
I think it's still pretty cool. I mean, it's a cool mechanism of the turning gears. It's a cool
Talking
piece.
about mechanisms.
I'm not saying I'm saying like it looks cool. It's still aesthetically pleasing.
Even
Because
with the
of the gear.
ugly tan plastic.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah,
disagree.
and it
I
worked.
think unpainted Tzolk'in looks ugly as heck. But any other honorable mentions?
I would also say, just for things that have
Yeah,
smart
the-
things.
Swear to
and-
God, Tucker.
Yeah. All right. Other honorable mentions are going to have to be Samurai, which is sort of an old school game, but
That's on my list too.
Oh yeah.
I thought it had very good Buddha and rice things or miniatures, and I think the temple tokens were just great. I mean, and the board itself with the nice hex shapes of Japan is just a beautiful sort of thing to put together. I mean, it's not as fancy as other games are these days, but it's definitely up there.
Excellent. Yeah, I totally agree on Samurai.
Yeah, me too.
Ben?
So I have a couple honorable mentions. My first one is a Kickstarter game, which I didn't back, but I have a copy of. It's called Dead Drop. And
I've
it's
never
like
even heard of this game.
Yeah, it's like a real simple deduction game. And it's amusing for a couple plays. The cool part of what they did is they had this real simple Kickstarter game, and what they did was they produced the same game in a bunch of different art styles, and then gave the Kickstarter backers every copy of that. So they had like, you could get all these different copies. I think I have like a Viking one, but there's like with school people, and there's like an Old West one, and then there's one with like spies, which I think is the original theme. So it's kind of cool that they took this very simple card game and gave you a bunch of different art for it. Plus, that ended up with me getting a free copy of it, so that was cool.
Excellent. Any others?
Yeah, another one I want to mention is Factory Fun, which is a fun game.
I've actually never played it.
Because it's kind of a very puzzly, and it can be prone to action paralysis, but it's cool because you end up with a bunch of machines connected by pipes to other machines, and it just looks really cool on your board. I want to echo Samurai, which Charles brought up, because just the plastic pieces in that game are awesome, and the puzzles. And then there's
I actually like the glass pieces better, or backlight, or whatever it was.
Yeah, and then the other ones is a combination between Metropolis and Ys, or basically any Ystari game, because they always have super good art and components, just like they use really high quality pieces. And the last one I'll mention was a gift from my wife Emma, which is a game called Super Moose. It's a stacking game. It's a moose, right? And he has like pieces of antlers, and you put the antlers on, you extend his antlers, and it's like trying not to fall over. It's just really cool wooden pieces.
Man, the things love has done to you. All right.
My honorable mentions, I gotta say Rising Sun, even though I kind of railed against it last episode on the mechanics basis. Even though I do like the game, I just don't think it's a 9 or a 10. I think it's a solid 7. With maybe the worst combat system I've ever played. But I can't complain about the aesthetics. It is the miniatures are amazing. The art in the game is amazing. All the components are just amazing. It almost made my top 3. And I also love the whole Japanese theme. Time Stories, just the art in the game is incredible. I don't even like Time Stories that much, but I can't say anything about the art. The art is ridiculous. A couple of licensed products, and they won't be the only licensed products on my list. Game of Thrones, both the board game and the card game by Fantasy Flight, are just amazing. They do like original art because they don't have, or they do have the TV license. I don't know, but
Yeah.
anyway, for the board game and the card game, they didn't use TV stills though. They actually paid artists to actually make Game of Thrones art, and it's out of this world.
They had the license before the series.
No.
So, yeah, they do have a lot of great art for it.
And Lord of the Rings, the card game, which is currently propping up this iPhone, same thing. It's Fantasy Flight,
Fanboy.
and they hired artists to like do original Lord of the Rings artwork, and it's just out of this world. All right, so top 3. What is your number 3, Charles?
All right. Let's go with a bad Kickstarter game. Mega Man the board game.
Nice.
I love Mega Man as a kid, so the possibility to get basically things that were only available as like when you were a kid in the Japanese market, which is all the different Mega Man bosses, and put them and all the different characters and Mega Man themselves and make them a bunch of different Mega Mans and pieces as miniatures, was great. I mean, I almost backed this game, and even after I read the rules, just so I could like say, hey, I can put these everywhere. I can give them to my other friends who grew up, or who grew up with this game. But yeah, man, those battles were not as good as the video game.
Awesome. Have you actually played it?
I
Or you just read a bunch of reviews?
I played it once.
Oh, wow. And it's really that bad?
It just sort of missed the mark.
That's a shame.
IP.
Ben?
Alright, my number 3. I brought my game, so if you are watching this on the YouTube, then you'll be able to see these lovely demonstrations. This game is called Das letzte Paradies, or The Last Paradise. And what's great about this game is it is a very simple bidding game that is extremely, extremely overproduced. It's the only game I've ever seen with giant wooden money. Let's take a look at this. Yeah, look at this beautiful, beautiful money.
That is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Wood money.
Wooden money. Yeah, that is unnecessary, to say the least.
Yeah, and there's just like beautiful tiles and these giant trees, and it's just like a very simple game that they could have made a lot cheaper, but it's just kind of fun. So that's my number 3. Das letzte Paradies.
Awesome. My number 3, which will probably surprise many of you, is Terra Mystica, which I just...
Are you a fan of that game?
I'm a huge fan of the
Nothing.
game mechanically, but I really do love the artwork, even though most people find it unexceptional. I love like just seeing all the little different elements on the board, and I think the artwork for the different races has a lot of personality. I really love the components, even though I did kind of upgrade the components in my game. But I think even the ones in the base game are very, very nice. And my friends can attest, I do have a copy of the board on my wall, so I really do enjoy the artwork.
He has
I'm not just
subliminally
saying
programmed himself. Yes.
Charles, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is the daddy of miniature games, which is Kingdom Death Monster. The game with miniatures so complex that each one has an instruction to put together.
You know, that game's on the top 100 now, too.
Oh, I know it is. I know it is because people waited for it so long. But I've literally have seen someone actually bring their copy to a public event where they painted some of the miniatures, and you know, literally the most flawless miniatures I've ever seen. I mean, it was.
I'm trying to goad someone into letting me play their copy at BGG Spring because I don't like to lambaste games without having actually played them myself. But I do not think this game is good from what I understand of the rules. I mean, like, you can roll a 1 and just, like, die because you rolled badly on a dice.
That's a sign of a good game right there.
We were talking about aesthetically pleasing, though. There is very few games that have ever been produced
Oh, no, I
would definitely
can't
try
that are prettier than...
I can't argue you putting it number 2. I'm just saying, like, is it a good game? Does it deserve to be in the top 100, for instance?
No,
Going back to
no.
our earlier topic, probably not.
Again, you know, I've not played this game because it just seems to be a chore. I mean, I remember reading the rules and the Kickstarter, and I know a lot about the game, you know, and the leveling up system. It seems like I could just play Gloomhaven and have much more fun quicker.
Yeah. You want to hear something hilarious, though? Everyone I've talked to who actually owns this game and plays this game and loves this game, they all enjoy the town building section more than the combat and the leveling up and, like, you know, customizing your character and stuff. Like, they basically love the upkeep of this game more than they like the game, which to me is hilarious
Because
because
it's
it's
actually
like
secretly a city building game.
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
yeah, you put all this effort into like these miniatures that cost hundreds of dollars. I think to go all in was like over $1,000.
Insane.
And then the fun part of the game is like the spreadsheet portion. It's like, what the heck are you doing?
Making a good spreadsheet, man.
Just play a video game. Video games exist, and they are prettier than board games.
Hey, you take that back.
All right, Ben.
All right.
Are we at number 2?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Alright, my number 2 is one of my first miniatures games, which is called Claustrophobia. So it's a 2-player
I've
game.
actually never played this.
It's got some pretty art, you know, some tiles and stuff. And the best part is a bunch of fancy miniatures.
You painted yours?
No, they come painted already.
They come painted?
Look at these
What?
awesome miniatures. Just go ahead and pass those around. Look at that.
That's actually, yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah.
It's very
It's like
hard
the
to
guy with
find
the hammer.
pre-painted miniatures.
I love
These
pre-painted
little dudes.
miniatures because I have
Yeah.
0% desire to ever paint a miniature.
And it's a pretty good game. I haven't played it in a while, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's
we
kind of
should
interesting. Yeah, it's
actually
one
play it
versus one.
sometime when
Yeah.
I don't have other games I'm trying to get played. But yeah, no, this is a beautiful game.
Yeah, it's real nice. Claustrophobia.
All right. My number 2, very old game that came out way before like people became obsessed with components, but was beautiful even then, and that is War of the Ring. And this is a game I do not think is a good game. I think it was a good game for its time. I think it's a very strong thematic game. But if you know anything about the end game, it's literally like you pull tiles from a bag and you see if you won. And you, the whole point of you playing like this 3-4 hour game is to edit the contents of this bag to either make it easier or harder for a certain side to win.
Isn't that the same mechanism
But-
as that Killer Bunny?
Yes, it's Killer Bunnies,
Oh my
Lord of the Rings edition with a huge, beautiful board and ridiculous components. But
Killer Bunnies, you're just trying to collect carrots.
Yeah,
No,
but
no,
it's the same
no,
idea.
it's
the same
like,
idea.
Increase the
Okay.
chance of winning,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
the whole point of the game in Killer Bunnies, you increase your chance of winning by putting more carrots in the deck. In this, you're playing this game to edit this tile draw that happens at the end of the game. So yeah, I do not think it's a great game mechanically, but I do think it is one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen. So that's War of the Ring. All right, Charles, you're number 1.
All right, it's time to nerd out because Fantasy Flight, here is your accolades. My favorite, one of my favorites is to just see people play Star Wars X-Wing.
Yeah.
When people like, I mean, and it's
Over
rel-
Armada or basically the same?
they're all basically the same. I picked X-Wings because it's sort of like the genesis of the system and the fleet and the planes, and most of the major maps and things that have come out for it are X-Wing maps. This is a really beautiful thing. When
Yeah.
you know, I've seen the maps where people lay out the Death Star or Endor or Hoth, and then you put these excellently detailed miniatures on top of these space maps, and honestly, it just looks like someone took a picture of a Star Wars battle and they're slowly playing it around.
You'd put it over Imperial Assault.
I would, just because of Imperial Assault is more of the the individual characters, whereas
And you like spaceships.
I mean it's spaceships
Yeah.
in space on a space map.
Spaceships.
It's hard to it's really a beautiful game to look at, and it's equally the system wise it's a fine game to play. I mean you can easily get for a 2-player miniature game, you can get started and learn it fairly simply.
Yeah.
Yes, it's extremely expensive to catch up with, but I played a small game of X-Wing and
Yeah.
I thought it was what
Yeah,
I'd give it like
I
a
think
6,
it's X-Wing, yeah. X-Wing
6.5, 7 game.
X-Wing's pretty, although not the start of the system. It is based on the Wings of War system. But, like, that game is real boring. Like, I'm going to do this command, and this guy will go this way, and then I'll do that again. And,
I
Yeah,
I
it's
thought it was
boring.
fine mechanically, but my whole thing, why I didn't even think about this game for the list, and that's because as soon as you have to take out a ruler and measure something, I'm like, this is not a board game, this is a miniatures game.
Yeah, it is
and it
a
even
miniatures
says like X-Wing miniatures game, I think is the full title. So I didn't even think about it, but I do agree with Charles. And actually, I haven't played Armada, but I think Armada's a prettier game because I like to see fleets fighting rather than individual spaceships fighting. But X-Wing is also very beautiful, so definitely a worthy game.
I mean, literally, all 3 of those games are, if you like that type of dogfight Armada, because, Star Wars itself is based on World War II jets, so I really just put it all together. So
Yeah. I mean, Fantasy Flight wins at components. That's all there is to it. All right, Ben, you're number 1.
All right, I have 2 number 1s.
Oh, you brought us pizza.
Yeah, I thought y'all were going to be hungry today, so I brought this box of pizza for you. It's just a theory, though. It's not actual pizza. So this is Pizza Theory. In addition to the box that is really a pizza box, the board looks a lot like a pizza, and you get to put pizza toppings on it, which is awesome. There's like vegetable toppings and like red toppings.
Why have you
some which
never
are
brought
meat.
this game over? Is it not a good game?
It's a good game. It plays 3 players. There's like an anchovies expansion.
Oh, it only plays 3 players.
Yeah.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
And it's got these awesome sticks and giant dice. It's just a really, I mean, it's not that complicated of a game, but it's just really beautiful because it looks like pizza, and pizza looks awesome. So that's one of my number ones.
Why
I
can't
agree.
you ever do anything by the rules and just, bring just a number one?
I couldn't stop doing these two because this one is also very special. It's called Primordial Soup. I have the German version, Ear Soupe. And the pieces in this game, okay, so the board, kind of ugly, but the pieces in this game, let me just show you for a moment. They are so cool. So there's some cubes, which are nice, but then your actual, like, in this game you're playing, like, organisms that are eating and pooping and stuff, and, like, you have these cool wind things with sticks on them, and as you upgrade them, you get to put little beads on top. It's just, like, super awesome quality pieces.
So I'm sorry.
This is a classic game. I've never
It was
played
a
this.
very
Good
classic
one, too.
game. Ben loved what was it? The Brio pieces back in the day with the little wooden railroads.
Look, man, here's what I'm saying. You don't have. This is my larger point. You don't have to go to Kickstarter to find awesome pieces. There's a lot of old games that are way overproduced, and that's a great place to find cool things. And at least the mechanisms are good. So
Yeah, they are good games. So.
Well, I think especially that pizza game brings out is like your components and art can really serve theme, and
Yeah.
so I think that is a great example of it.
Here, I want to bring another number one out. Let's bring in Wasabi. Yeah.
Oh,
go for it.
An-
Number
an
one's
ex-
for everybody.
An excellent game. It looks like a sashimi mat, and you have green wasabi cubes. You have all the it's mostly an art thing. You have all these beautiful pieces of art that are put together, and I've seen people really up the level by adding like bowls that come with it and things. So it's a very nice game. So there you go.
All right. Well, if we're doing bonus number ones, my bonus number one is
Bonus
Risk
number one's
Legacy.
Risk
which
Legacy.
I thought about putting
Okay.
on here. It's not a pretty game, but I love the way it looks, so I guess that would still count as aesthetically pleasing. I love the way you actually change the world map as you play, and it just has a very cool visual effect. So I think that still falls under aesthetics, even though I wouldn't necessarily call it pretty. All right. Number one, my real number one is Star Wars Rebellion. So Fantasy Flight continues their streak. It is it's built as Star Wars in a box. It is Star Wars in a box. You basically play the whole trilogy in a game, and it's so much fun. So it's also a mechanically solid game, but they did such a great job. Like, the board is almost the size of this table. Not the Kickstarter board, because it wasn't Kickstarted. Fantasy Flight doesn't use Kickstarter, thank goodness. You didn't have to go on and buy an extra size board for this game. It just comes with it. Every copy of it has this board that's almost the size of my dining room table, and it's just beautiful to look at, and all the ships are well done. The artwork is really cool, so yeah, Fantasy Flight, way to go. Alright, so now moving on to games we played recently. Charles, what have you been playing?
I've been playing new games with Trey, so a lot of
We're
this
gonna talk
stuff
about the
goes-
same
We're going
games.
to talk about a few of the same games, so we'll share some of them together. I actually want to talk about a game I wanted to play for a long time, which was Fields of Arle.
I think it's Arl.
I think it's just Arl.
Arle. Okay.
Like Carl.
So
Fields of Carl.
Yeah, you know
Fields of
Carl.
Carl.
He's got a little cabbage patch in his backyard.
It's pretty nice. Pretty nice.
So one day we were here, we didn't film an episode, but Trey took all this time to set up this elaborate game.
Oh man, we were getting it played.
And we were
No matter
definitely getting
what.
it played.
It
And
took 30 minutes to set up.
yeah, it was like, all right, I've seen this game before. It's a 2-player game, but now there's a 3-player expansion. I'm hyped to play it and have it ready to go. Definitely, as far as the game itself went, it was fun. But I mean, if someone knows how to play the game and other people don't, they're going to win because the game has a lot of things going on. But I thought it had an interesting upgrade mechanic of different items. I think that might be a little bit too important.
I felt the same way the first time I played it. Like, it is an overwhelming game, but like once you played it a few times, it becomes very simple. So it's kind of a weird effect. But yeah, it's a lot. I mean, you have 3 player boards in that game, and there are so many components. Like I said, it took 30 minutes to set up, so it's kind of crazy.
But yeah, overall, just I have mentioned things about Uwe not having the greatest of years, but whenever he made this game in the third player expansion, right on par. I mean, the master of farming strikes again with new ways to farm.
Because that's what he needs to make. More games with new ways to farm.
I mean, if it works, right? And they keep doing it.
Well, I will say it's probably the more. Yeah, it's a lot the first time you take it.
I really want to try that.
Yeah.
Sounds cool.
Ben?
So I played a game called The Chameleon, which is like a combination between Spyfall and a word game. So it's like there's like a grid of words that are in one category. So it might be like buildings. So it's like a bunch of different buildings, and then everyone rolls die and they get to look at their card, and either they're the chameleon and they'll know what the word is, or they have the way to figure out what the word is. And then each person says one word that has something to do with that word. They all say one word, and then people try and guess who the chameleon is. If they're successful, they win, unless the chameleon can figure out what the word is. So it's just like Spyfall. You have to sort of say something that's close to the word, but so people know that you know what it is, but not so obvious that the person can guess it. It's always good as Spyfall. It's like, it's okay to play a couple times around, but then you're like, how many times am I going to play this? It's actually funny, because we were playing with a girl who messed it up like 3 of the 4 times we played, and she also won every time. So somehow she kept making a mistake, and yet she kept winning. It was like, she's like, oh, I didn't know that was the word, but she still won. It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Okay.
I recently also played this game. It is a very good game. If you like Spyfall, it's basically Spyfall with words.
Yeah. Okay. And
Yeah, my first game, which I think Charles will probably also want to chime in, is Gaia Project. I've been playing the heck out of it. I've been playing it every weekend. It is basically Terra Mystica in space, but that really kind of undersells it because it's a very different game. And at first, I was sure that I liked Terra Mystica better, so I was like, why am I even bother playing this game? Why don't I just play Terra Mystica? But the more I play it, it might actually be a better game. I mean, I need to keep playing it, because I played Terra Mystica like 200 times, and I've only played this game like less than 10 times, so I can't make that comparison yet. But the more that I play Gaia Project, the more that I see what they did with the Terra Mystica systems, and I think in most ways it might actually be better, whereas when I first played it, my impression was like, this is actually worse than Terra Mystica. But I'm starting to slowly change my opinion. We'll see how it shakes out in the end.
so this is a game that has made me. Okay, Terra Mystica over time has made me downgrade my opinion of Terra Mystica. I mean, at first when I started playing it, it was a 10. Then it went down to 9.5. Went down to a 9, and I think right now it's at an 8.5.
That's because you played it too much.
No, it's because it's fundamentally unbalanced, and
Oh yeah.
Oh, so let
And
me
you
ask
have
you this,
to-
Charles. Does Gaia Project, does that fix the unbalance problem, or?
It's too early to say.
it is
We have to
probably
play a
too
lot
early.
more.
It is probably too early to say. However, I don't have a lot of faith in them doing anything to make it much better. It's not. They have good ideas, but I think balance is their challenge and their flaw.
Yeah.
And there are races that are fun, and there are races that are unique, and there are races that you can go to. And the system is great, but the underlying problem is going to be that the best, like, they've designed 2 games now that probably are best suited to having people who've played them many times and are able to auction appropriately depending upon the variable circumstances. And I'm not sure if that is good enough.
Yeah. And
So,
in their defense, though, I think these games are impossible to balance because the factions are so asymmetrical and the gameplay is so complex. I think it was an impossible challenge. I think they could have done a better job, especially with the Terra Mystica expansion and with the Darklings in the original game. But I do think it was never going to be perfectly balanced. At best, it was going to be somewhat balanced, and I think it didn't quite get to somewhat balanced. It got to kind of balanced.
but part of the fun, and I'll say this, probably Terra Mystica is still a 9 for me, but probably part of the fun is figuring out where that balance lies, and you can put a lot of research. There's a lot of depth and meat to bite into these games, and I do look forward to,
exploring Gaia Project, figuring out which races are terrible and which ones are actually broken.
Exactly. Making the opinion myself.
As you will inevitably find, I'm sure.
Yeah. Charles, what else you got?
All right, so that's what I was going to say next, but you beat me to it.
All right.
Probably the next game that I've played recently that was New is going to be. I mean, I did play Civilization: New Dawn,
Oh,
which
you
is
did?
also on your list. Yes.
Yeah, how'd you feel about that?
Let's see. It's funny. It makes me miss the old Civilization game quite a bit.
I do. I got the new expansion.
We
Yeah,
have the
we need to
expansions
play
for
that
this
again.
game.
I'll play that.
I thought Civ New Dawn was a good try at, bringing things together, making things much quicker and streamlined. I did get the vibe of Civilization, but it just didn't feel quite as meaty as a normal
Yeah.
Civilization game is.
Yeah.
And was it just me, or does it feel homogenous between the cultures?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like you get one like minor power. Instead of like different civs, it's more like I have a slightly different power than you, or I have one power that you don't have. It's like, and I like the basic system where like you play a card and then it goes to the back of the line and then it gets better over time. The less you play it, it gets better. That's a cool system. I do not think they did anything interesting with it because it kind of was a boring game. But I do like the system. I'd like to see that system taken into a different game, maybe a meatier game or a more interesting game that does something more exciting with it. And I don't think it's a bad game. I rated it, I think, a 7 or maybe a 6. I just think Golden Ages is better. If you want a 90-minute Civ game, I think Golden Ages is still the best 90-minute Civ game there is because there's not very many of them and most of them are just bad. I think A New Dawn is pretty good, but I don't think it's better than Golden Ages. So
Well, I haven't played Civilization New Dawn yet, but Golden Ages is bad, and you should not play it. That must be sad.
oh lord.
It's real boring. That was a game that we started playing at BGGCon, and we quit halfway through because we're like, is anyone having fun with this game? And no one wanted to keep playing.
I love Golden Ages, but
That's probably why I play here so much.
I have played it several times actually. All right, Ben.
All right, the game I want to talk about next is called Welcome to Centerville, which is a dice game that actually feels a lot like Rob the Dice game, where you're rolling to try and get a lot of the same type of symbol. This one is city themed, so you're building in different parts, or you're trying to take political office, and it just really works mechanically. There's just a lot of clever ideas, and you can get points a lot of different ways, so it's a nice little point salad game, and there's stuff you can score for every turn, or stuff that you only score for at the end of the game. So overall, I can recommend Welcome to Centerville.
I've actually already talked about this game on this show.
Okay, well then,
Ah!
I assume your review was also
It
positive.
was also very positive.
Yeah,
Well, I'm
it'll
not
get-
here every week.
Really
It'll get
funny.
talked about again because I still haven't played it yet.
Yeah.
All right, and then I'll finish up with Dice Throne. I actually played this a long time ago, back in January at PAX South. It is a duel game. It is a dice-based duel game. It doesn't take very long, otherwise it would be bad. But it's like 30 minutes or less. Basically, you have a character sheet that has like different powers, and you're playing Yahtzee. You have like your 2 rerolls or whatever, and you're making sets with your dice, and like depending on what you roll, you can activate different powers on your character sheet. And I guess the cool thing about the game is every character, they're like your typical fantasy tropes. There's like a barbarian and an archer and like night elf archer basically. There's all those like typical fantasy classes, and you can be one of them, and they all have radically different abilities. And they're also trying to roll different things on their dice, and all the dice are custom. It's also a very pretty game. So I think it's a pretty good game. I don't particularly ever want to roll dice for 30 minutes to play in a 2-player game, but if I did ever want to do that, this is probably the best game to do it in. I didn't hate my play of it. I would never choose to do this. I would play Patchwork or Hanabi or some other more interesting 2-player game. But, if you want to play Yahtzee, 2-player Yahtzee, it does have a team variant, which is probably more interesting. I didn't get a chance to try that, but, not a bad game. All right, well, our game day is about to start, so we'll have to wrap up this episode. We'll talk about the other games next time.
Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We're on YouTube and Twitter at eternallybored.com, and our website is www.eternallybored.com.
And there's like the Instagram Eternally Bored, and like there's the Friendster Eternally Bored, and the
There's no
MySpace
friends. I do have an
Eternally
Instagram.
Bored.
And don't forget the Punchboard Media thing as well. So
Oh,
Yeah.
Punchboard Media.
Go,
Yeah,
go check us out at
we're-
Punchboard Media. Go check out Punchboard Media. Look at all their podcasts. And in case you haven't noticed, that's board with OARD because we play board games.
And really, if you don't know how to spell the show you're listening to, then what's happening in your life right now?
No, please ignore him because when he goes has these moments.
Again, Ben does not officially represent the
Yes.
opinions of Eternally Bored. All right, so until next time,
We're eternally bored, so you don't have to be.